When I was a teenager, I moved into my father's home for the first time in California. I had some paranormal experiences in this house that I often now joke about with friends, as I believe it 100% was my own fault. I've never shared my story with strangers or people who might have insight, so here goes. My stepmother would always say her deceased father was around and would mess with things whenever my father and her got into an argument, like misplacing his things during the night so he would be late for work the day after, etc. I never really believed this, as I wouldn't put it past her to hide his things herself. But my stepmother and I would often talk about the paranormal and ghosts. We didn't come from a religious family or anything, so it was always a very open discussion. Our house was right next to a cemetery on the other side of our fence. I was 16 and loved listening to scary stories on YouTube whilst painting, doing homework, etc. My stepmother and I had talked about Ouija boards, and since I was an, I guess, edgy teenager, I bought one. I spoke to my friends about it, and they were all very intrigued with the idea of trying it. The first time we tried playing with it was Halloween night at the cemetery next to my house. The security was amped up this night, so my 3 friends and I found a large tombstone to hide behind and play, so we wouldn't be seen from the road. Absolutely nothing happened this night, which gave me this kinda ego about it, where I took it even less serious. The second time I tried it was also my last. Once again, this was a group effort with my 2 friends, both with the same name, which can be kinda confusing, so I will just call them C and R. We did a more official seance and did a quick Google search on how to do it beforehand. We lit candles and planned to have me and R holding the planchette with blindfolds on so C could read out potential responses. We asked a few questions with no response, but suddenly the planchette moved around. I had assumed that R and C were trying to fool me, so I wasn't scared or believing it completely. We asked for the entity's name, and I can't for the life of me remember it, but it sounded like an old Hebrew name. We got bored eventually after a few more boring responses, said goodbye, and that was that. After this time of playing with the board, things started to happen in our home. It started out so small I don't even remember much of the stuff in the beginning or a chronological timeline of events. I started waking up in the middle of the night and would feel this strong presence in the corner of my room by the door. I oddly never felt frightened, as the energy felt, I don't know, female. I would just roll over and fall back asleep after staring into the dark for a bit. I would also feel strange in the guest bathroom and would avoid going in there at all costs. I thought at the time it was the lighting that was strange. It was very bright and reminded me of a Sephora or makeup store. It would just make me feel extremely aware and anxious. The event that started amping up the activity was when I fell sick for 2 weeks. I almost never get sick, but was incredibly unwell and ended up going to the doctor, who gave me antibiotics I turned out to be allergic to, so I got more ill and had a bad rash all over my chest and stomach. During the time I was sick, I stayed in the guest bedroom, as my parents were redoing their bathroom, and they also did not like the guest bathroom, so they used mine. I hated being in the guest room when I was sick. I was in the most confusing fever dream at all times and felt like I was being watched and that the energy was being sucked out of me. I felt like a huge dark weight was on me when lying down. I would feel better if I left the room and slept on the couch or snuck into my room. I heard voices speaking to me in the dead of night, that despite being sick I could brush off, as I was self-aware enough to know I had a burning fever and probably was hallucinating. When I finally got better and got my room back, I slept like a baby the first night. Until the energy followed me in there. I would wake up every night and the energy in the corner of my room would suddenly feel threatening instead. I would hear new noises in my room that had never been there before. I know exactly what the AC sounded like, how often it turned on, the noise the door would make when it would turn on, or my dog would lay up against it on the other side. I started hearing noises from behind me, which made no sense at all as it was just a wall. It sounded like scratching. I had complained about it so much, we ended up getting our house checked for rodents. Around this time is when I would get touched when I would walk down the hallway past the guest bathroom. It was always so subtle that I wouldn't realize until I had walked into the kitchen. I also started listening to music 24/7 at home, so I wouldn't react if the spirit or spirits would speak to me. I felt like acknowledging it would make it worse, so up until this point I had tried to ignore all of this and brush it off. One night my parents went out for dinner, and they would always get me something to go on their way back, so I could stay at home and chill. I was standing in the laundry room, which is right by our open-concept living room and kitchen. I was scooping dog food from my 2 German shepherds who were hovering over their bowls next to me. Suddenly, I heard a lady say, "Hey, T." T is the nickname my family uses for me, and since it was a woman's voice, I turned towards the door and go, "Yeah?" thinking it was my stepmother. My gaze automatically locked on the hallway that precedes the kitchen straight across from me, when I realized I was home alone. I looked down at my dogs next to me, and they also had their eyes glued to the same spot as me and reacted at the same speed. I walked a few steps out, and my dogs followed timidly, which was strange. Suddenly, like I was in a cheesy horror film, my dog's ball rolled from behind the kitchen counter and stopped when it hit the wall ahead of us. Keep in mind my doggos were sat right next to me, so they couldn't have messed with the ball. I was so in shock, but remembered my family had the Life 360 app, where we can see each other's location. So I check, and my parents were going well over the speed limit on the freeway 20 minutes away. I didn't even know what to do, so I just fed my dogs with tears in my eyes and went to hide by my desk in my room. The scariest event that happened, although terrifying and has sat with me for a long time, I still take with a grain of salt, as I had smoked some weed a few hours before. I hadn't tried it many times before that, but had gotten home and took a nice warm shower and listened to some music. I normally got super paranoid when high, but I was coming down from it and more relaxed than usual. I was so relaxed I even walked around my room naked after I had gotten out of the shower, which is something I never do, as I am extremely reserved and find clothing comforting. But I was walking around my room and wanted to move my bowl of sewing pins from my dresser over to my desk. I dropped the bowl and had to bend down and dig into my nude carpet to find all of them again. As I bent down, all naked and vulnerable, I suddenly felt like the walls were closing in on me and heard whispers from the walls. It was coming from all around, so I was hurrying to pick up the pins. My vision also started to blur, and I was feeling a tightness in my chest. Suddenly, I heard a deep growl from over my shoulder that made my entire body tense up. All the hairs raised and instant goosebumps along with tears in my eyes. I jumped into my bed to feel a sense of comfort and hide my body from this invisible thing. I laid in my bed and hid like a little kid even though I was 16 years old. I have never been so frightened in my life. I laid there for so long and had to pee so bad, but I was too scared to move. I FaceTimed my best friend to comfort me and explain what had happened, so I felt safer getting up, quickly throwing on some clothes and went to the bathroom. This experience scared me so bad I also didn't touch weed for over 2 years, but when I hit uni I became a functional pothead during exams, and have never had any experience like this when high. After this event, nothing major and scary happened. I would still hear a woman's voice from time to time, and our kitchen sink would turn on so I could hear it from my room. But that was the last time I was scared of anything paranormal. After my family moved to another state, nothing else has happened to me since. My stepmother threw my Ouija board out during the move, so it never got to touch base in the new house. I feel that from playing with the Ouija board, I opened up some sort of contact that otherwise wouldn't have been known. I have tried to psychoanalyze the situation and the living situation I was in. My family was extremely emotionally toxic, and we had our issues, that's for sure. So I have considered it the mental toll of my family dynamic manifested itself in some anxieties for this unseen force. However, In the new house, nothing has ever happened and our family dynamic became worse there, so I don't believe that's the cause. I'd like to hear what you think. Was I just a paranoid and anxious teen with some family troubles and interest in the paranormal that then made me believe things were happening around me? Or did I open up some communication with RNC through the board that one night? Or a whole third option? I seriously doubt anyone has made it this far in my story, as it is very long, but if you are reading this, then thank you for the time of day. This is a long story, but 100% true. In the summer of 2019, I was 19 at the time. I had a lot of stuff happen that caused me to become very depressed. My boyfriend had just broken up with me, without telling me why, and shortly after I was assaulted by my so-called friend. Needless to say, I was at a point in my life where I didn't give a damn about anything. So, when my friend asked if I wanted to use a Ouija board with her, of course I said, hell yeah. We agreed to go to our local Books-A-Million to buy the board and decided we would split the cost since it was only $20. My friend, we'll call her Lily, instantly started having doubts about whether we should mess with that kind of stuff. Both of us are Christians and were always taught that messing with that stuff was a big no-no. However, I assured her that all would be well and that if it would make her more comfortable, we could buy some protecting incense to burn around the house while we played. This made her feel better and we proceeded to purchase the board. The main reason Lily wanted to use the board was because her grandmother had just passed away and she wanted to see if she could contact her. I did warn her that if her grandmother was in heaven, she most likely wouldn't come through since the Lord wouldn't allow that. I did support her and agreed to at least try to contact her. As for my motive, since I was little, I had always felt something or someone wanted to talk to me. So, being the depressed girl I was just like, screw it, bring it on, demons. I also had vivid dreams where, in every one of them, I was assaulted by demons and would end up being the mother of the Antichrist. I obviously didn't and still don't take these dreams seriously, but my friend was intrigued to see if anyone/thing would care to explain them to me. Fast forward to her grandmother's house. Lily's grandfather wasn't there because he was taking physical therapy for his hip. So, it was just us and the board. I could tell Lily was nervous and a small part of myself was too, but I refused to show it. I was assigned to be the guide, the person that asked questions and such, so I placed myself in a comfortable position and opened the board. Are there any spirits that would like to speak with us today? Nothing. The planchette didn't move and everything was silent. I asked the same question about 4 or 5 times before there was movement. As soon as it moved to yes, I asked what their name was. It spelled out some sort of gibberish that I can't remember and ended up telling us it was one of my cousins that died in a fire. I knew that I didn't have any known cousins that had died in a fire, but I played along with it. At some point, the spirit started making a figure 8 across the board and counting down numbers, for which I said a stern, "Hell no," before saying goodbye and moving to the next session. This same little girl kept contacting us repeatedly, except she didn't make figure 8s or count down like she had before. Lily and I both tried to figure out what the hell this thing wanted. Before we knew it, the little girl changed into a male demon named Vovo. Based on my readings about Ouija boards, I knew that this could have been Zozo. However, he swore up and down that he wasn't, but that Zozo was in the room with us. Apparently Zozo wanted to harm us, but Vovo wanted to protect me. Not Lily. Just me, which I thought was weird as hell. After talking with him some more, we learned that he was present in all those dreams I had been having. He was destined to be the father of said Antichrist and claimed that he was and is deeply in love with me. Of course, I thought all of this was BS, but Lily was excited and began asking questions. Every time she would ask something, the planchette moved to no. Eventually she gave up and asked if he just wanted to talk with me. I agreed and continued asking questions. Apparently, there was this whole plan in hell where I was going to be the mother of the Antichrist. Vovo was in very high ranks when it came to other demons. According to him, his rank was right below Lucifer's. All of a sudden, the planchette flew to goodbye and the board stopped all movement. Lily and I agreed to try one more time to contact her grandmother, but of course it was Vovo again. He said he had revealed too much information and displeased Lucifer, but at the same time Lucifer wanted me to know some of this knowledge. I'm still completely skeptical at this point, so I just shrugged and said, whatever. All of a sudden, I could feel something brushing against my lips and cheeks. The feeling moved down to my breast and caused me to shiver. I yelled out, "Screw this," and closed the session. Then, both of us lit lavender incense and walked all around the house saying the Lord's Prayer. After that, it was getting late, so we went inside and went to bed. I don't know what made me want to use the board by myself, but the next day I thought it would be a good idea to do so. Lily sat in front of me while I did it alone and watched as the planchette moved to spell the name Vovo. After talking for a solid 2 minutes, I got creeped out and stopped. Fast forward months later, I was at my friend Kat's house with my other friend Ashley. My father had burned the board once he knew I used it, but we all wanted to use it again, so we went to good old Books-A-Million again and purchased another board. Lo and behold, after we started using it, Vovo was the only one to come through. He yelled at both of my friends and told them he only wanted me to talk. He claimed he had been watching me since I was 5 and that everything that was planned was supposed to go down in 2023. He also said that in order to get me pregnant, he was going to either do the deed himself or possess my current boyfriend and do it that way. Nevertheless, this all creeped the hell out of my friends, and we stopped using it. You would think I would learn by this point, but a couple months ago, I am now 20, I went to my other friend Amanda's house and got high with her and her friends. This was probably the stupidest thing I've done in my life, but I encouraged all of us to play while we were high. I don't remember any of it if I'm honest, but according to Amanda, I was saying random things and they had contacted Vovo. Vovo refused to let anyone talk and kept spelling my name. However, I was too gone to say or do anything. After an hour of my friends trying to get him to talk to them, he spelled my name the entire time. They gave up and helped me get to bed. Moral of the story, it seems that whenever I use the Ouija board, I talk to the same spirit/demon. You may wonder if I'm worried about this, to which I tell you, not at all. I'm still very strong in my faith and believe the Lord wouldn't allow that to happen. I guess we'll just have to wait and see in 2023. This is a story, but it comes with a serious question. I'm 68 years old. I've been an addict most of my adult life. When I look back and try to psychoanalyze myself as to why I continue to live this way, my thoughts always go back to a time in my life when my siblings, cousins, and I started playing with a Ouija board. None of us were over 13 years old at the time, and I can't remember for the life of me where the board came from. The first time we played, there were 4 of us touching the planchette. The only question I remember us asking is if they were dead. The planchette slowly moved to yes. I know I wasn't moving it, and from the look of fear on my sisters' and cousins' faces, I could tell they weren't moving it either. It freaked us out so much, we just let go, and as far as I know, no one ever touched it again. We didn't know about closing the door, and the board was just placed in a closet and was probably thrown out at some point. I don't really know. A couple of nights later, we tried to levitate a table. I don't know if people still do this, and I can't remember the spell. Remember, this was over 50 years ago. All I remember is that we all placed our fingertips on top of a heavy dinner table and said something. The table started rising, and when it got about 2 feet from the floor, we all freaked out again and ran away. The table then dropped hard on the floor. That was the last time we dabbled in the occult, but I think the occult wasn't done with us. It didn't affect everyone, just me and my cousin Jimmy. Life changed for both of us. I'm not proud of what follows, but I can't explain how bizarre life became without telling everything. At 12 years old, we started breaking into houses. We started drinking and doing drugs. Our circle of friends changed drastically, and we both got involved with witchcraft. Nothing like this had even crossed my mind before the paranormal experience. Jimmy was sent to juvenile detention until he was old enough to go to prison for kidnapping and attempted murder. We didn't come from broken homes or bad environments. Jimmy was a gifted athlete and could have gotten a full football scholarship to go to college, but instead he went to prison. We both knew what we were doing was wrong. We talked about it. We just couldn't stop the bad behavior. I said all that to say this. I learned about spirit possession a couple years ago. I met a shaman who helped me realize how real spirit possession is. He said I checked all the boxes before I even told him about not closing the Ouija board. He moved out west before we started the cleansing ritual. He sent me a piece of pyrite to keep in my pocket, and a blessing to say before I carried it. It actually helped at first. I'm not sure if it was the mineral or a placebo effect. Does anybody have any experience with this sort of thing? Am I nuts for thinking this way? Any help or guidance will be greatly appreciated. I haven't had many scary experiences, but definitely the most insane one was my second time ever using a board. It was my last day of the semester before I moved out of my very old prison-like dorm. My roommate, who was also a high school friend, and a female friend of mine hung out and used my roommate's board. This is the first and only time I've used a board with a mix of genders, and I've heard that adds power to the board. We talked to a few spirits, but they were quite weak and bland with the responses. Then comes the spirit who identified itself as NZN. NZN claimed to be a Crip and died in a gang fight and was in Boston looking for his aunt. It took a liking to my roommate since it reminded him of a friend when he was alive. NZN would say my roommate's nickname every once in a while, in between questions. This spirit seemed to have a significant amount of power compared to others, and the planchette moved a lot quicker and stronger than all the ones before. It also lasted a lot longer than the other sessions. Now to the freaky part. A little context, my first name is Hayden. After asking enough questions to get a good idea of NZN's story and stuff, I decided to ask where they were in the room. It responded with my roommate's name and then my other friend's nickname that it came up with for her, T. I then said, "So right here?" and stuck my hand in between them and wiggled it around a bit, and the planchette flew out of our hands to no. It then started to spell out H-A-Y, and I started to get a bit nervous since I didn't introduce my name and neither did my friends. It finished with sack. It started spelling haysack over and over again, and when I asked if it was me, it immediately went to yes. It then proceeded to do all the classic red flags with a board, and we would scold it to stop, and it would stop only to call me haysack again, then resume counting 0 to 9 or Z to A, or to the corners of the board. Each time we basically yelled at it like a dog and eventually forced a goodbye on it. NZN then continued to pop up in almost every other session we had during that day. The moment it identified itself as NZN, we forced a goodbye until the last time we asked if it would cooperate and not try any funny business, which it agreed to, and after a bit of conversing, it promises it would keep my roommate company until they moved out. I left a week early due to transferring out of the college. That was probably the scariest moment I had with a board, but I had another freaky one that was more just kinda solid proof for scary. A group of friends and I went urban exploring at a massive abandoned mental hospital that has a bit of a rocky history. One of those friends was my old roommate mentioned before, so they brought their board with them. After a bit of wandering, we found a wooden narrow and steep staircase that led to a subterranean level of the building, and discovered some meat lockers. Our bright minds decided to use the board in one of the lockers with the big metal door almost closed. After a few attempts at getting some contact, things just felt really weak and disconnected, so a few of my friends who were spectators and also filming decided to leave and explore elsewhere. When my friend with the camera went up the staircase, the microphone got a bunch of disturbance and stopped the moment he left the staircase. This roughly lined up to me and two other friends who stayed back with the board, attempting our last contact before packing up, and received a very weak signal. The planchette moved at the speed of molasses, and to test the board we asked how many people were above us since we knew how many went up, and we heard them up there too. The people on the board heard the footsteps and a dragging noise that we identified afterwards as a fire hose. The board went right over the correct number to 0. Knowing the board was incorrect, we gave up and packed everything up. When we got up the stairs, we found the room empty of people and our friends in a completely separate building. After asking them when they left, because we heard noises above us for a bit, they said they were messing around with the hose when one of them wandered out of the building and toward another one, and the other swiftly dropped the hose and followed. That meant the board was technically correct, and there was no way any of the people using the board could have known, so it couldn't have been faked. That was one of the sessions that really solidified my belief that it's not worth messing with a Ouija board. Hey guys, glad to see you made it to the end of the video. Have you ever had a creepy experience with a Ouija board? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. If you have any stories you'd like to be narrated, be sure to send them in. Alright guys, that just about wraps up the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, Fearseekers. I'll see you in the next video.